Welcome to Founder Radio. I'm your host, Hugo. In this podcast, you'll hear in-depth conversations with the globe's most exciting company founders. We'll talk about their ideas, their successes, their challenges, and their learnings along the way. At Founder Radio, we celebrate founders, and we believe that innovative founders are critical to deal with the challenges humans face. They are society's explorers and work in uncertainty to expand our practical knowledge each and every day. Building something from scratch requires creativity, intelligence, conviction, and endurance. Get inspired and learn from those that are changing the world. Hello you, welcome to another episode of Founder Radio. Today we're talking to Antonia Marino. She's the co-founder of Kontempo, and Kontempo is the leading payments and credit platform for Mexico's industrial sector. We'll hear more about the founding story, early successes, how Kontempo replaces traditional banks, and about the woman from Brazil that played a pivotal role in the conception of the business. I'm looking forward to it. Antonia, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Hugo. Thank you for welcoming me. Excited to be here.
Great, me too. It's great to have you. Let's dive right into it and start with a very fundamental question on Kontempo. Why did you start the business?
It's a great question, and there's always the romantic version and the real version. How do you want me to start?
Romantic first.
First. Well, so the romantic version is there's a huge opportunity in Mexico to allow businesses to grow with financial solutions. There are many companies that are underserved in terms of financing that can't grow to their potential because they are not offered financing. Like the financing sector in Mexico is extremely concentrated. Banks and financiers don't really have the risk appetite to serve the market, the complete market. So there are many companies that are credit eligible that can't have access to credit. And I think that this has a huge impact in terms of economic growth for Mexico. So we saw the opportunity to leverage financial data of companies and transactional data of companies within their suppliers to be able to offer financing to SMEs. And that's why we started building Kontempo. It's a huge market. It's underserved and very few players adding technology and creative solutions to solve this problem.
If that was the romantic version, what would be the more real world, messy version of that?
The messy version of that is my co-founder and myself. We were already in Mexico doing a similar business before. Same opportunity that we identified, which is Matthew Meehan. He's the co-founder of Kontempo and CEO. He came to Mexico to start a financing business that was called Kontempo. And at this moment, I was in Uber in the Mexico City office, and I was running vehicle financing programs for drivers who couldn't access financing for the same reasons that I mentioned about businesses. The type of problem that we're solving in Kontempo is just a different user. Basically, when I was in Uber, I was thinking about how can we use the driver's data to help them access financing with institutions that they wouldn't have access to financing. And at this time, Matthew, when he was coming to Mexico, he was looking to do something similar in the B2B space, in the supply financing in Mexico. I got super excited about the project. We started this business together and we learned a lot about Mexico, about the bottlenecks of financing within the supply chain in Mexico, the industrial sector. We had the chance to build a product, launch a product, grow a business. We were able to close big clients here. And after a year and a half that this business was operating, this company was not financed by traditional VCs. It was financed by two financiers. And these two financiers decided to do a merge between the three companies. We saw the opportunity after this merge happened to continue leveraging the learnings that we had with the first project by still building product and technology for solving financial access within the industrial sector, but basically leveraging the learnings that we had with the first product. So simpler product, more integrated to the supply chain, and a different distribution approach than what we had before. I think more targeted as well. In the first project, we had several products, financing products, and we targeted way more, and we focus more in building software platform and building the payments and credit platform for the industrial sector, not only financing products for that sector. Let's go above, and we decided to simplify the product and to make it easy to adopt and to consolidate the value prop. I think that in the first company we saw several opportunities that we were trying to solve with different financing products. And with Kontempo, we packaged better the technology aspect. And in that sense, I think that distribution and the adoption is way better than what we perceived in the first company.
And what's your value prop to your users? Why would they use Kontempo?
So basically explaining a bit what we do and then go into the value prop. We are a payments and credit platform for industrial sector in Mexico. So our clients are big companies that are selling to SMEs, recurrent supplies. And it's these companies, usually the SMEs will require to their supplier credit to, for example, if we focus in the cement industry, for a constructor, for an architect, or for a cement distributor to acquire cement today to do a new project to grow their business, they will probably lack liquidity to invest in the purchase of these supplies, because their clients will pay in 60, 90 days. So they have to purchase supplies today and they will have the inflow of money in the future. So they have a gap in their cash flow, and they will usually ask their supplier for credit. And the reality is that these suppliers that are big companies or medium companies in Mexico who are selling cement, glass, aluminium, food, they are not a financier. They are not specialists in evaluating credit, underwriting, and processing credit payments, but they have to do so. And they've been doing for years. And usually 60 to 70% of their sales are credit sales. They are receiving the inflow in the future. But this is very informal. It's usually an invoice that they send to their customer that will be paid in the future. And there's not really a credit underwriting or a formalization of the credit, which represents first a huge risk for these companies because they have big credit portfolios seated in their balance sheets, impacting their financial health. But if they don't do that, they won't be able to sell because the companies that they are selling to don't have enough liquidity. So it's like a problem that they are forced to give credit to their buyers, otherwise they won't sell. But they end up with a huge risk and also with their growth limited because they also have limited liquidity and limited access to financing. So what we are offering to these companies is payments and credit platform that will allow them to continue doing what they've been doing before, but with technology without having to use their own cash flow to finance their customers, and with therefore no risk of selling on credit. Mm-hmm. So the merchant, by implementing Kontempo, will be able to offer credit lines, revolving credit lines to their buyers who will have access to pay supplies in up to 90 days. the merchant will be able to sell more because they will be able to offer more credit to customers who have the need to grow their business. So a part of selling more, the merchants will have cost reductions. They will be able to stop thinking about operating a financing arm inside of their business without being their core. So the credit department that they have now processing papers to evaluate customers in a very inefficient way. This will be improved with technology. Now this department will have access to a platform in which they will have their credit portfolio information, almost like a CRM for credit. So they reduce inefficiencies within the credit operations. That is a very important part of their business. And they also reduce losses since they won't absorb the risk if a client ends up not paying in the future. Kontempo is absorbing that risk for them. So it's like an ROI positive impact for the merchant. Sell more, reduce costs of operational costs, cost of capital, and the default risk. And something that is very interesting as well is that you inject liquidity for this merchant, because if this merchant was offering financing inside with their own cash flow, they would be receiving the money in 30, 60, 90 days. And Kontempo pays the merchant at the same date that the selling is processed through our platform. So they basically sell as if it was a cash payment, simple as that. But their customers have the opportunity to finance their purchases in up to 90 days.
Great. I can understand why merchants would want this. This, I think, helps them on a lot of fronts. Are they also the ones that pay for the financing, or are also their buyers paying the interest rates and maybe some other fees to Kontempo? How does that work in terms of your business model?
We have platform fees that the merchant will pay for when implementing Kontempo, like the software fee, platform fee, and we have transactional fees. The transactional fee we can break down within, there's a piece that is financing and a piece that is risk. And this fee will be summed up, and depending on the term that the customer selects when payment, it will be a different fee, right? It's very interesting because the merchant has in the platform the ability to define how his credit program will work. So Kontempo integrates in a white label solution to their current credit operation in a way that the merchant will be able to define what are the terms that will be offered to their customers, and if the merchant will absorb the complete fee or part of this fee. So it's a modular system that they can play around and define the conditions that they will offer to their customer. And that's really an aspect that we see as key for adoption, because since the buyers are already used to having 30 days free financing with their customers in the industry because of the normal practice in the industry in Mexico, the merchants usually prefer to absorb the first 30 days, 45 days, so the buyer has a free financing in a way that this will drive adoption. More buyers will request credit, more buyers will want to transact with the merchant, and this will have an impact in growth.
Makes a lot of sense. And sounds like a rather complicated business still, with a mix of sort of traditions, how stuff is done before, but now the ability to tweak much more because of technology, have much better overview. What did you learn about this business that you didn't know before starting Kontempo?
I think that one of the things that I'm learning and still learning is that simplifying is always the best way to go. So exactly this point that you mentioned, that it can't be complicated because the industry had already operated in a certain way. I think that if you try to give lots of options to the customer and present many opportunities for the customer to have to decide, this won't work and no one will adopt or will understand your product. So I think that simplifying is the thing that we're learning more and more. We were really flexible in the way that they could create their program. And basically we were telling, you can do whatever you want. You can define the terms. You can define if you absorb 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, or if you translate this cost to the customer. For a business that is not used or haven't seen this product before, they'll probably get overwhelmed. And I think that one thing that I learned as well with B2B is that your user is probably more incentivized not to decide and to continue with the status quo than making a change. So you really have to simplify the decision for the B2B user so they can see the impact without taking risks, because it's not really prone to taking risks.
Yeah, understood.
And we learned, and we started doing this last year when we are implementing Kontempo with the merchant. We guide them through for example, the payment plans that we already seen working within other industries. So we've been working with several companies within the construction industry, and we've seen that this is the success story to drive more adoption, for you to sell more, and for your customers to be happy. So we recommend you to implement the payment plans in this way. You absorb the first 30 days, and then if your customer needs more terms, they will have the option to extend financing, but they will pay for that. And when we started simplifying that pitch, it was way easier to implement Kontempo and launch faster, and for the customer to try out and see the impact. And if they had the need to make changes in the future or to personalize that, it would be way simpler because you're already live with the customer. So I guess simplifying our product and giving less options for the customer, mainly when they have to make a decision. It was the learning that we had. I think that a big learning for me as well is how the Mexico industrial sector is connected, and the importance of referrals and connection, and you building connection with the companies and creating a network, positioning the company within the right events, associations, to be able to build that credibility. And once you start operating with big names, or you position yourself in the right networks, you create credibility, and the network effects that you build within that are extremely powerful.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. And I understand what you say about the events and the right associations. But I'm also wondering, do you also leverage your existing customers? Maybe do you ask them to introduce you somewhere, to pitch for you, to make sure that they tell their friends in the industry that you guys have done a great job? Do you do that proactively as well?
Yes, practically, and as you mentioned, more of a relationship-based introductions. But also what we are trying to do now is productize that, because in the first aspect, for example, we have big names as clients that we use them when we are closing a new client and they ask for reference. They can talk to these big names, or testimonials are extremely powerful, like videos. This is great. And we proactively ask them to open up doors for us and talk about Kontempo. This is powerful. But also when I talk about productizing it, if you think about there are several layers within the supply chain, and we can add value in mostly, I guess, all the supply chain. We just have to identify the right connections. So for example, we had a customer that had a credit line. When this buyer uses Kontempo to pay a merchant, this is one node of the network. This buyer probably needs financing to pay other 7 to 15, 20 other merchants. And when this buyer is happy with Kontempo and growing their relationship with the merchant with one credit line for this specific merchant, they will probably request, hey, can I have a credit line and operate with other suppliers? So there's a powerful network effect. And also the merchant of this buyer probably has the need to pay their suppliers depending on the size of the company. And they will also be interested in having a financing to pay their suppliers. So we usually distribute Kontempo via the merchant. The merchant will offer financing to their buyers, and it's a closed ecosystem. But when the customers are happy, they will think about leveraging that ecosystem, and they will ask to refer their other suppliers to implement Kontempo.
That's great. You can work your way through the entire supply chain that way. That's clever. And how's the company doing?
The company is doing great. We are at our third year of operations in Mexico. Last year, we grew 10x. It's been a crazy year for us. I think we are very lucky to have the best investors, the best clients that have built a great team. And last year was a lot of building the team, and that would allow us to grow and to get to where we are. And now we have this challenge that we've been growing a lot with network effects. And now this year is a year in which we have to set the growth for scale. So define or consolidate more our growth channels, grow our team, and leverage all those network effects that we've been seeing last year in an organic way to move to a more scalable way.
Makes sense. Hence also the productization of recommendations. I can mention that takes a lot of time. And you probably can't afford that anymore when you're growing fast. Antonia, on the financing, because you finance a lot of these transactions that were typically financed by the merchants, but that also requires Kontempo to finance itself, right? Which is not always easy as a young startup company. So how have you done that?
We're lucky to have brought to this project debt financing, and we have also equity financing. So we raised money from venture capital. We did a seed in 2022. And the equities mainly used to grow the business and the operations. And our debt financing partners are financing the growth of the credit portfolio. And I think it's the hard part about a business that has credit is that to grow, you need more and more money.
But if the credit providers are happy, then you have a good story to tell, I imagine.
Yeah, but we are always raising it in the end.
Got it. Okay. That's a good problem to have, I'd argue. And can you tell us a bit more about the first year? I mean, now everything's going great. You 10x the business the last year. Sounds like you really have a good handle on how this works and how to further accelerate growth. I imagine the first year was a bit more, explorative, harder. Could you tell me a little bit about how that played out and how you discovered and build out the first version of the business in that year?
I think that our first year, I wouldn't say it was the hardest because we had pretty clear what we were building. So we didn't have to iterate a lot to define the product or who is our customer or the distribution channels. We had that clear because we had this story in which we were operating in the space, both Matthew and myself, and part of the team also came from the first project that we did in Mexico. We had built so many learnings about the industry, the segment. I think that we had already done our mistakes. Not that we've done all the mistakes, like we're always learning from mistakes, but all this explorative phase we had lived before Kontempo, which was great to start in a very fast way and targeted way. I always say that we looked like snipers in the first year because we had so clear our goal, the go-to market, what we had to do. And it was really simple. Like we had very simple objectives. We need to build a team. We need to build a product and raise money. What is the product? We already know. We already done it. We already seen it. So we simplified and we built the first version to go live in 3 months, which was basically all the client interfacing product. In the back, we had a nightmare, but in like the product was live and we were able to go to market within 3 months of launching the company. The team, we already had worked with people in the industry before that liked working with us, believed the vision we had, and came to the project. And very early, we had already like a first team, a launch team, and that accelerated a lot to go to market. And since we knew very well the industry, we knew the problems we were solving for whom. So what we started to do when we launched the company was basically, let's do a waiting list of customers that we know and that we think will be interested in this product. So, and we started pitching Kontempo and selling Kontempo before having the product ready. So we have a bunch of LOIs signed of customers that were super excited about the product. And that would create the demand that we would need to show to raise capital. Mm-hmm. So I think that the objectives were very simple in this first year, and we didn't allow ourselves to make it complicated. So it was first people in, LOI signed, we need to show demand, we need to start selling this even if we don't have the product, and let's build the product. And while we were building the product, like this first simple version, we launched a few pilots in a more hacky way to start operating and learning, mainly learning the pains, how we would invite customers and generate adoption, the processes that we would have to put technology in. So we were very focused in this go-to-market fast, in a fast and simple way.
Did you ever worry about whether it would work at all? Or did you just know the playbook, everything happened as you pretty much had it in mind and you could just execute and take it step by step?
I think that in the first year, I was just worried about executing as fast as I could. And of course, when you start executing, you start learning, right, from the customers, seeing things that you probably thought should go away and it's not working that way. So I think that for me, the hardest year was probably the second, because then you have to consolidate the learnings and the things that are not working and be creative in proposing adjustments to the product or to the solution. We didn't really change the product. We worked way more in how we distribute and activate. But the first year, honestly, I think I was in a mode, in a mindset that it was just like, go get clients, go get the money, and you just have to move as fast as you can. Don't think, execute, get things done. And I wasn't afraid. I think I was just speeding up as fast as I could.
Sounds like a great first year.
It was a great first year.
You guys did make a bit of a tweak versus the other company you worked at, because you focused on industrial companies, right? Like, what was the thinking there, and why did you make that tweak to the model?
In the first company, we were working with a few industrial clients, but it was not only industrial. And what we like about the industrial segment is, one, it's really big, so it's a huge market opportunity. Second, the problem is very clear for them, and it's the same problem that the company that sells cement is facing related to offer credit is the same problem that the company that sells auto parts is facing. So it's pretty scalable, and you can learn and leverage learnings from different industries. We also love the industrial sector because there is recurrency, which means data. to underwrite, to, in the end, know more of the industry to lower the risk of defaults. And this product requires recurrency because it's a very short-term financing. And the more data you have and the more recurrence you have, the more you can build and engage and create a stickiness. I'm sorry, you're going to ask something.
Yes, I was wondering, you already pointed out that your learning was keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple, and then try and simplify a bit more. Is that also happening under the hood? Because I can imagine, like for long-term success of Kontempo, it's super important you do a good assessment of who you want to give credit to and who you don't want to give credit to, right? Just to make sure that there's as few defaults as possible. Like, what do your models look like in that sense? Do you make it super complex, or is it also very simple? I saw on the website, for example, you need to order 3 times, pay cash, and then you can get a credit. Is it as simple as that, or is it much more complicated under the hood?
Well, I think that everything can be as complicated as you want. So we try to simplify the product also, because otherwise you end up building a Frankenstein. A core part of what we are building in terms of product is the risk engine and how we process data to evaluate credit worthiness of companies. I could explain this in a complicated way of there's lots of sources of data that will feed this model. But I think that the simple way is we're trying to access credit worthiness of companies if they have cash flow and if they had credit before, if they had good credit behavior. And the risk model will be fed with several sources of data that in the back can seem complicated, but for the customer is very simple. How they connect to Kontempo and allow information to feed our risk model so they are going to be evaluated. This is a very simple experience for the customer. And in the back, we process all this data to be able to define a score for this customer and give credit. One thing that we've learned in the beginning on purpose, we started focusing in smaller buyers because we needed to test our risk score, adjust while we were building it, and we didn't want to lose a lot of money. Like we needed to learn and iterate with the risk model to then be confident with the scoring to be able to go to larger customers. What we've learned is, and I think I wouldn't change that. I would have done the same. But what we've learned is that the smaller customers are worse payers. So when we started focusing in bigger buyers, we saw better payment performance, which was really good because we already had the risk engine trained. So we're confident to go to bigger buyers. And we saw that these bigger buyers were paying better than the smaller ones. And we also liked the bigger buyers because you don't need the same volume of customers that you have with the bigger ones.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And fun discovery that the small ones are the worst payers. That's interesting. Antonia, where do you want to take the business in, say, the next 5 years? What's your ambition with it?
We want to be the CRM for credit. So I think that one of the hardest things of our product now is explaining the complete value prop to the customer, because the customer doesn't have any other thing to compare with. We're building something new, and there's no direct competition to what we're building. So we are opening up a new market. I want us in 5 years to be in a place where there are other players doing the same. So we're the reference, and there are other people trying to copy us, because this allows us, it will be much easier, I guess, the selling process. And that companies don't have to question if they will implement software credit provider to operate their business. And it's that type of questioning that you don't even question today if you're building a CRM inside of your company, or if you're hiring Salesforce or HubSpot, or like, you don't question that. You won't do something that is not your expertise. You need to have technology within your sales and marketing functions. Otherwise you won't grow. And I want the same for credit. Like, why credit departments in Mexico are still running and pushing papers all over the place and running huge credit portfolios in an Excel. Why they are financing these businesses with their own cash flow, limiting their customers and their own growth without thinking about having a financial partner. Why these companies are investing in technology a lot in their industrial aspect, in the plants and in machinery, but they are not investing in core areas of their business. Like, if they're selling 60-70% of their sales in credit, and they're still doing this without technology in a very old school way, why this is not seen as an opportunity for growth, for building a more solid business. So I want us to be in 5 years in a place where people don't question that. It's almost like straightforward. Like, I have to implement a software to manage my credit and payments area. Otherwise I'm behind.
And you will be if you keep the growth rates up like you did last year. But that's a great mission to be on. And Antonia, how did a girl from Brazil end up starting a business in Mexico City? What's your story?
I think I always loved traveling, knowing different cultures, places, and I always knew that I wanted to explore. And for me, it comes from a place of curiosity, like getting to know other places. It's just intrigues me to the unknown. So I've always wanted to be able to, that my life, my career could move forward to different places. I wanted to see things. And I ended up in Mexico because I was in a company that brought me to Mexico, and I was very open to move. And I left Brazil in 2016 and went to Chile. I was working in Uber, and Uber took me to Chile in 2016, and we were launching Chile, opening up new markets and growing the business there. For me, it was very exciting. Like, I had never been to Santiago. It's this curiosity aspect of, wow, I have to figure out a different place. I need to learn a new language. I have no idea of how working in Chile will be, but let's figure it out. And when I went to Chile, I started thinking about Mexico because this company had the headquarters of LATAM in Mexico. And for me, it was an exciting growth path to be able to aim Mexico. And then after 2 years that I was in Chile, I had the chance to move to Mexico with Uber. And that's how I got here. And it's funny because the first year was really hard, and I wanted to leave. I didn't want to stay here. I was thinking about if either I'll go to Amsterdam or the US. I didn't want to go to the US, but I was like, I'm going to explore. I'm not happy. Started seeing other places. And then fast forward, after 7 years, I'm here.
What happened?
I think that I learned to love this country, and I learned to also to just endure and stay when things are hard. Like, the first year was really hard in many aspects, and I think that leaving was a way out. I was running away, and I learned to endure. And I realized that the hardest things for me in the first year, it was not really Mexico. I was running away of my own problems and things related to work, also things not related to work, but was a way to start from scratch. And I think that for me, I'm a person that likes changes, and I like having a blank space. I love the unknown. And sometimes I can force movements just to start from scratch again and run away from problems. And I learned with this first year in Mexico that I shouldn't run away, that I should figure it out here. And I figured out that I love Mexico and the life here. And it's a country full of opportunities, full of life. And then I'm here 7 years after building a business in Mexico.
You're not leaving anytime soon.
I don't know. I never say no, or I don't know. Now here today, January 22nd, I'm in Mexico. Tomorrow, I don't know.
But what made the first year hard then? Was it just sort of the normal adjustment of being in a completely different country, different language, city where you probably didn't know a lot of people, that kind of thing? Or was it something else?
Yeah, I think that kind of thing. But I usually get excited about these things. I think that I had different expectations of what the work would be. And it was a moment of a lot of changes in my team. And I think that I left a very small team in Chile to a bigger office, bigger team, very different work. I had to adjust to the new challenges. And I think I had different expectations. I was frustrated. Like I thought I would be as excited as I was when I arrived in Chile. And I wasn't. And I was frustrated with the work. I wanted to move faster than I could. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that paints a bit of a picture. And when you zoom out a little bit, like how else have you evolved through your move to other countries and through your professional experiences?
I'm learning. It's not that I think it's a constant process to not judge the differences. People might think that everyone in Latin America are the same and think the same. And usually I think the big mistakes that companies do when trying to come to LATAM is putting everything in the same box and, oh, this is LATAM. People behave this way and they function this way. And because I have the chance of working in several countries of LATAM and now I'm in Mexico, I learned that this is not true at all. And cultures are very different. And there are many aspects of the Mexican culture that clash a bit with my way of thinking and working. In the beginning, when I came to Mexico, I was frustrated with that, with the differences and judging the differences, thinking that my way of thinking or working or moving was better than what I found here. And I think that I learned that it's just different and you have to work with it. And if the more you know, the better you navigate through the differences. And I think that in the beginning, you just have to be very open to listening and learning and understanding how people think and behave and why they are doing the things that they are doing. And this way, you become a sponge that absorbs all that information. And after you're able to navigate more smoothly the differences. You don't have to change the people. You don't have to judge if they are what they do or how they do or how they say or how they communicate is better or worse than what you're used to it. You just have to adapt to it. I think that was a big learning for me.
And for the Europeans and maybe Americans listening, could you give some examples of clear cultural differences that you ran into between Brazilians and Mexicans?
Well, Brazilians, they usually don't have a lot of filter and they say what they think. They are full of energy. They move very fast and they're more informal in the way of either expressing or being. And the Mexicans are very formal. They work in a more hierarchy way and they like formalities. And one thing that I learned in Mexico, and if there are Mexicans listening, take it with a grain of salt and forgive me. I think you probably laugh of it, but it's if someone's If you're in Mexico and a Mexican tells you yes, means maybe. If a Mexican tells you maybe, means no. And if a Mexican tells you no, it's not a Mexican. and and I learned that.
You'll get into trouble.
I'll probably get into trouble. Oh no, I think that they know that. They even make fun of themselves with that. But it's something that I used to get so frustrated, like either with clients. Sometimes you think that you're moving really in the right direction, that you're aligned and business is going to be done. And it's that they just don't want to tell you that they don't want your solution. They don't want to implement your solution. And they are less direct. So you have to learn how to read them. And that happens also with employees, relationships, friendships. I had to learn a lot. Also, not to sound rough or too direct. I think there is a balance that you have to be yourself, but also adjust your communication depending on the environment that you are to be able to be accepted or to build relationships.
Totally. And who have you been inspired by, and who have you learned a lot from in your journey?
I think I learned so much from the people that are in the day-to-day with me. So I've always learned a lot, and I'm continuous to be really inspired by my father, who is a reference for me. And I still think when I want to make a decision or when I'm facing difficulties or struggles, I still think what my father would do or say. So he is this reference for me of wisdom. And the more you grow, you're more distanced in the day-to-day from family, right? So then today I learn a lot from my co-founders, which inspire me and teach me so much every day. Sometimes I don't believe that they are my co-founders. It's like, these people are awesome and they are great and so full of experience and teach me so much. Like, what am I doing here? What did they see in me? Like that imposter syndrome. But I learn a lot from them and they inspire me every day. The team as well. I think that every person that you hire and you work with and that you interact with in the day-to-day will challenge you if it's the right person. And I think that when we are hiring people for the team, we're always asking this question: is this person coming to challenge me, to push me, to teach me? That's the type of person that I want here. Someone that will be able to push all of us, raise the bar for all of us. And recently, I'm also super inspired by indirect way. I love an ultra runner that it's called Courtney Dauwalter. She's an American that runs 100-mile races. And she has she's known to be like the fastest long distance runner, women. I just absolutely love how she thinks about endurance. And she's a woman that runs 24 hours straight. And she's always smiling, always seeing the positive aspects of the process of enduring. Someone that talks a lot about expecting with intention the pain to come because it's the moment of growth. So a lot of people are trying to think about pain in a way that I want to push forward. I don't want to feel pain and I don't like pain. And she talks about pain in a way that pain is, I want pain to come because it's when I'll be stronger and I know that I will grow. With a smile on her face and like super chill. And I'm like, how can I be that person? If you Google it, you will probably see her with a big smile, large running shorts. She usually runs with men running shorts and kind of like in a good way, a childish energy of curiosity, of fun. She's 39 and she talks and exhalates this energy of a child that would be running around with that adventurous vibe. I want to be like this. I want to.
Sounds great. And for those who want to step in your footsteps and are considering starting a company for themselves as well, what character traits do you reckon you need if you want to start a business?
I think that you have to be curious and really excited to know the problem, to know your customer, to ask the right questions. And I think that you can only build something valuable if you really like building and solving problems. Because if you're thinking that on status or that power, or I want to have a company because I want to be my own boss, like all these things, it's like bullshit, and you probably won't succeed. And they're easier and better jobs if you're driven by that type of vibe, which is fine. Like, I think each person will have their own motivations, but I guess that if you're thinking about opening your company, I would recommend you questioning why you're doing it. Like, are you excited about the problem? Do you like solving problems? Do you like building? Do you like your customers? Is this thing that you're building exciting and enough for you to be able to endure all the pain and suffering and hard, like all the difficulties and struggles that you face in the way? Don't do it for the glamour, because it's not glamorous at all. Do it because you like building and you like solving problems and you're curious. Mm-hmm. And I think so a part of curiosity, I would say, kind of like a fearless vibe. You don't stop when you're afraid. You have this attitude of jumping when you're afraid, of going faster or moving. And I think this is very important, because you will be afraid, and there are many things that you won't have the answers, that no one will have the answer, and you will find yourself in a position of fear because you don't know what to do, how to act. And I think that the only way is giving one step forward and then the other step forward. And you will find a way by trying, by asking for help, by talking to people. But you need this energy of movement when you're afraid. Otherwise, it's just impossible, and you won't be able to build. And I think that the third thing that I would mention is humbleness. I used to think that before, like, I remember when I was in Uber, I used to think that the leaders or people in charge of making decisions, like big decisions, or that I thought they were big leaders, I used to think that they had all the answers and they knew exactly what they were doing. And I think that the good leaders and the people that are able to build, they are people who just ask questions all the time, ask customers. And to be able to think this way, I think you really need to have humbleness and stop thinking that you know the answers, the solutions, or that you have to know.
Got it. That's great advice, I think. What do you recommend people do? Do you recommend they work at a company first for a couple of years? Do you recommend they dive into directly? Or is there stuff you recommend people don't do if they want to get ready for starting their business?
I think there's no right formula. And I'm not sure if I'm someone to recommend something. I think I can't recommend. No one can, actually. I can talk about what worked for me, and so far, not sure if it will continue working. But I think there is no right path. I think that just be open to how life goes, and the doors open while you're moving. And kind of like, you have to trust your gut and don't try to control so much or put the right formula or be so rigid, because the opportunities will come in different ways to different people. And the way it happened with me, it was very natural. I always knew that I wanted to have my company, but I never knew it was going to be this here in Mexico and doing what I'm doing now. But the way things happened allow me to be here now, doing what I'm doing. And I think that when people try to plan so much and put a lot of like rigid formulas to what they have to do and how they have to behave to be successful, they end up losing important opportunities.
Because it's not in line with their plan, you mean?
Yeah.
And what's the best advice that you ever got?
I think be myself. I used to think that I had to be in a certain way to achieve what I wanted. I think I used to control certain behaviors or things that are very genuine of me to project a different image that I thought it was the image of that would take me to succeed. And that's so tiring. And there's no perfection, or you won't be accepted and by everyone, or there will always be people that you will connect more with and people that won't like you, and that's fine. And I think that the more you try to be something to fit a certain space, the less true to yourself you are, and therefore the less happy. And probably I think that won't take you to success, because you are not connecting to who you truly are. And when you're yourself, you just attract people that vibe with the same energy, and that allows you to build with more fun and a more relaxed and natural way. And yeah, I think that I learned that I'm learning that, I guess. For example, I remember when I was in Uber, I was really young compared to my peers, really young. And I was afraid to be perceived as young. And they would think I'm not experienced enough, or I look like a child, or I have no idea what I'm doing. And it doesn't really matter. It can be your superpower, the fact that you're young. You're full of energy. You might probably, naturally, you won't have the same years of experience, but you have other advantages. And this thing that you're trying to change or hide could be what the superpower that will allow you to grow. And I think this happens a lot with women in general, because we think that we have to have man traits to succeed in the business space. And I think that society in general benefits from that balance of traits. That there are really good things, like more natural traits from men and more natural traits from women, that if you build the balance that our environment in which these traits are balanced, everyone will benefit from that and feel much better. Exactly.
Antonia, it was a real pleasure to talk to you. Super impressed with what you've built and all your learnings along the way. Is there anything else you would like to share with the audience before we wrap up?
If I can share an advice, is to move when you're afraid. Our natural behavior when we're afraid of doing something is to stop and think and think and think and hyper analyze stuff. And if there are people here listening to us with ideas, with plans, with big dreams, just know that these things they will always be hard, but just move. When you have the sensation, you just have to go. Just go, make decisions, move one step at a time. And I think that would be the only thing to add here. There is no right timing. There is no right answer. You won't know everything. You will be afraid. So just start. just take the first step forward.
That's a fantastic note to end on. Thanks again, Antonia. Really, really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks everyone for listening, and definitely don't hesitate either to reach out to Antonia if you want to know more about Kontempo or about her advice. I think that she'll be able to share more. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Hugo. It's a pleasure to be here sharing.